Today we've got a well-loved soundtrack from the NES. This is Pixelated Audio, episode 64, featuring Journey to Silius. Welcome back to the bi-weekly video game music and retro gaming podcast, Pixelated Audio.
Today we're going to be playing music and talking about Journey to Silius. We are your hosts. I'm Brian, and this is James.
Hey, the track that brought us in was the title theme from Journey to Silius, or RAF World in Japan, composed by Naoki Kodaka.
Such a cool track, right?
Yeah, no, I really liked it. I loved
Very classic NES sound.
Yeah, that was one of the big things that I really liked about it. We haven't done an NES track, it seems like, in forever. We love Sunsoft, and I really personally like this soundtrack. And this song was just so energetic, and I loved when it like slows down and picks back up. So there's tons of pacing changes, which just really was really exciting, especially for a title theme.
Right. Well, you and pretty much everybody else who played this game loves the soundtrack because it's incredible. It's really good. The thing about this game too is that it's not just the soundtrack. The game is actually really fun. And so for me, I did have this game growing up, and I played the hell out of it, but the problem is I never was able to beat it until just recently.
Yeah. Yeah, you sent me the text message that had the credits, and we always, whenever we beat games, we always send each other pictures of, you know, like the sound engineers, the composers, and stuff like that. So. Yeah,
so I sent it over. It was really late at night because I've been grinding on that last boss for a while.
Yeah, I think I was about to go to bed, and I got this text, and I was like, oh, awesome, Brian beat it.
Yeah, so no, this sound is very gripping, very heavy. I think it's been a long time too since we've done a kind of more well-known title, like a popular kind of game. Yeah, it definitely seems like we've been in the obscure trenches for a little while. Right. No, I remember getting this game actually. There was this rental service that was offered, and I can't remember the name of it. If you guys live in the US, you might remember. It was really popular in the I want to say the early 90s, maybe like 91, 92, because I didn't have this game when it came out. And what you could do is they had this catalog that they sent you, and it had all these, a list of all the games, and you would put in an order, get, I think it was 3 or 5 games, and they would mail the cartridges to your house in like this kind of box. And you had, it was like 5 days to play it, and then you had to send it back. So that's how I played a lot of games if I didn't own them. Because we had
sounds like Retro Gamefly or whatever that.
It was kind of
whatever
like
that is.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. So this is how I played like a lot of early like games that I didn't own. I played that. I mean, that's why I played a ton of NES games, because I could just rent them week after week and try them out. And if I didn't like them, send them back. I rented this game, and I remember me and my brother playing, and just getting so frustrated because like like when you're a kid and you're like, oh man, this game cheats. This game cheats. I mean, This game cheated.
Yeah.
This game totally cheated.
This game is really rough. That was one of the things I noticed right off the bat. I was just like, this is not easy.
Yeah. So if you guys remember what that service was, definitely let us know. Because I can't for the life of me remember.
Yeah, and I didn't have anything. I mean, there may have been something available, but I just played most of my NES games by borrowing them from aunts and uncles or friends. And I don't really think that places like Video Connection or Blockbuster and stuff like that were really renting a lot of games. And back then, I think that was kind of a little bit later, like Genesis, Super Nintendo era.
See, that rental service was actually much later on. So I had already been playing borrowing games from friends and trading, swapping, all that stuff for quite a while. And this rental service actually started, I want to say, in maybe 93, maybe that late. So this was quite a while back. But that's when I first experienced the game. And I remember that the box looked really cool.
Yeah,
it has this really kind of almost apocalyptic feel to it.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed right off the bat.
The font is really neat too.
Yeah,
on the cover.
Yeah, so. and the font is actually tilted on its side too, which was one thing that was really unique, I thought, for American box art, to have text running up the side instead of just right at the top. Because I noticed that a lot of American box art has the logos and stuff at the top, and a lot of Japanese box art is usually the logo is kind of at the bottom. So, but to have it running up the side, I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, it did kind of make it I guess a little bit twisted kind of take on gaming. But yeah, this soundtrack is incredible. I think a lot of people that remember this game remember it best for the soundtrack. And it's just unbelievably deep and heavy. And there's no extra sound source being used, no extra chips in the cartridge. So one thing I want to bring up is the fifth voice on the NES APU, and that's the DPCM channel, because it plays a very significant role in this soundtrack. And we're going to be bringing it up probably a lot here and there throughout the episode. We should all be pretty familiar with the way that the NES sound hardware works, or at least the capabilities to some degree.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even I understand it. I mean, there's 2 square channels, a triangle, a noise channel, and that sampling channel.
Right. The sampling channel, or DPCM, is more often than not used for percussion, but it can also be used as a melodic voice, as heard in quite a few Sunsoft titles, including this game, Journey to Silius. So that first track that we were listening to, it really makes use of that channel and that kind of melodic tone. And we're going to be hearing it the entire episode.
Yeah.
Well, so you want to hear a little bit so give you an idea?
Yeah, I think doing it early on in the show would give people an understanding of what's going on so that they can kind of really understand it as we progress through the episode.
Cool, yeah. So here is that channel soloed out. So you can see that's pretty cool. I mean, it's not doing something crazy, but it gives it that very rich, deep tone.
Super deep. Yeah. I mean, that was one thing that I noticed right off the bat from the soundtrack is how deep it is. And I love deep sounds in songs, especially, retro game music. So that was one of the reasons why this game stood out so much to me. Yeah, and we don't hear that a whole lot on the NES. We hear a lot more brighter music. So having something that really has that, I guess, low, deep bass is kind of, I mean, it's kind of rare enough to where it kind of gets you thinking about the soundtrack a lot more. And I think it was definitely a very conscious choice for this game because, like you said, that apocalyptic feel, and it's a very kind of dark game. So I think it just fits all together as one of those things that makes this game on every kind of box you want to tick off with graphics or gameplay or music and everything. It all kind of goes together.
Right.
So Journey to Silius, or like I mentioned, Raft World in Japan, is a side-scrolling action platformer that was released in 1990, developed by Tokai Engineering and published by Sunsoft for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yeah, it was originally planned to be a licensed title based on the original Terminator movie from 1984.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, we know. You know what? We'll turn this episode into a drinking game.
All right.
So every time James makes a Terminator reference, you take a shot.
Yeah.
If I do it, it's 2 shots.
I'll get ready once we play some tracks. I'm sure I'm going to be referencing Terminator.
Anyways, I guess at some point, though, during development, Sunsoft lost the license. And then rather than scrapping the whole project, they gave it kind of like a new coat of paint and then redid the story.
Yeah, and it really feels like a Terminator game, though. So definitely some of those elements got left in the game. I'm sure that would have been a lot to redo. There's, like you said, the post-apocalyptic, and there's robots and things like that.
Yeah,
so.
I didn't think of it when I was a kid. I didn't even associate it with Terminator at all. It was the last thing on my mind. But after I learned that it was originally a Terminator, I can't get that out of my head.
Yeah. See, now for me, I played the game and I listened to the music and I was like, wow, this reminds me of Terminator. I love this game. And then to find out later on that it it actually does have some roots with Terminator, I was like totally blown away.
So you guys are probably already drunk by now based on James. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, you know, they had the license for Batman, which was released the same year and probably wasn't too cheap either.
Yeah, I would assume that, those licenses, those fees and stuff like that are pretty expensive. And, you know, by this point, like we said, the original Terminator movie was 1984. So that's 6 years old by this point. And Batman was just the year earlier in 1989.
And
so
also it was, you know, Batman's a comic book, not only a movie. It's, you know, in pop culture and everybody knows Batman. So that's probably if I were going to pick one of the two, I would go with Batman. More of a cash cow, you know, get everybody hooked. The other thing is, too, you know, like how many parents are going to want to buy their kids a Terminator video game over a Batman?
Compared to Batman,
Yeah, so there's that. But it's kind of interesting because Nintendo Power briefly looked at Terminator when the game was still in development as Terminator. And they showed the title and like a screenshot of the game in the issue, and it was showing, it's basically Journey to Silius, but it's kind of wrapped around. It was like an early preview of the game.
Yeah, so definitely if you look at those images, you can see how Journey to Silius still looks very much like what they were planning for the Terminator game. There's just, you know, some sprite swapping and a little bit of reworking some things, but I mean, if you put the screenshots side by side, they would look very, very similar.
No, I agree. All right, so let's talk about the development and publication of this game, because I think there's some pretty good info out there.
Yeah, I don't think we have to go into too much about Sunsoft, though, since we covered them pretty thoroughly on our Sunsoft Batman episode, which was episode 10, long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the games that they were doing that were really big around the time of 1990 for the NES was Gremlins 2, Nanti Tante Baseball, and Shanghai 2. They were also doing some stuff for the Genesis and the TurboGrafx 16, like Batman, City Hunter, and, you know, a few other games.
Yeah, across a bunch of different platforms.
Yeah, Sunsoft was really active around this time.
Oh, yeah. And I think we've talked about Sunsoft numerous times. I don't think it's just the Batman episode. I think there's been other times where we brought certain key points up and stuff about it.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty strong love for Sunsoft. They did some really great licensed games.
Oh, totally. But Tokai Engineering, it's a really interesting, almost mysterious kind of company. So according to numerous company documentation and Japanese fiscal earning reports that I plowed through, and I'm really like embarrassed to say how long I spent looking through this stuff, like really digging deep.
Well, I mean, you may be embarrassed to tell everyone, but you were really excited to tell me.
Oh yeah, I talked your ear off, I'm sure. But Tokai Engineering was kind of like a dummy corporation, like a shell company set up in 1988. So on a lot of Sunsoft games, you'll see a label with TEC prefixed on the cart, as well as the developer copyright. So you see like, you know, developed by Tokai Engineering, just like Journey to Silius. So the quote-unquote company wasn't only used for software development. The name was also stamped on a lot of the integrated chips on Sunsoft cartridges, including the IC controller in Journey to Silius. So they were also developing the hardware stuff as well. It's really weird. Like I can't quite figure it out.
It was definitely pretty integrated into Sunsoft. It wasn't just like two totally separate things that were, they had a role. They were kind of interweaved and intertwined pretty heavily.
Yeah. So what's really interesting here is that Tokai Engineering is also the main shareholder of Sunsoft Corporation. So as of 2016, it owns like almost 20% of the entire company. And I mean, that's the largest one. The next one down, I looked in the fiscal earnings, it was like 5% or something like that. It's a huge shareholder.
Right.
So that was also weird to me. But I think the most convincing aspect to the kind of this whole shell company idea is that I went through a bunch of Sunsoft game credits, and I was asking you too, hey, can you check the game credits for this game and this game? And I noticed, and your notes back to me showed that the developing staff was the same across the board. Whether it was a Sunsoft developed title in quotes or a Tokai in quotes developed title.
Right.
So I think I just think that's, I mean, they could have hidden it a little bit better, you know? Right?
Yeah, and I mean, we had talked about things, and, you know, a lot of people know about, you know, Konami, and they created that fake corporation for Ultra games, which, you know, we did a ton of big titles like Turtles and stuff like that. And, you know, a lot of that was because Nintendo didn't want Konami's name on so much that was coming out at the time.
Well, they had that clause where, you know, you could only publish 5 titles a year.
Yeah.
And so I guess they wanted to avoid another game crash. So they really wanted quality control, and they really wanted to have, kind of their hand in every single release.
Right. So, so you can see why Konami would kind of find a way around and create another company so that they're still making this. It's the same group of people still making games, but they kind of got around that clause. But I think for this, it's a little bit different because Sunsoft's name was still very heavily involved in a lot of the Tokai stuff. So I think
it was still the publisher.
Yeah. So they weren't really hiding it from the outside world. So that makes me feel like maybe it was more like for tax reasons or some type of internal company type stuff, or maybe alternate dev teams and stuff like that. This one just got like a separate company, or I don't know. So it's really odd. And I think unless you were someone that was there and involved in all that stuff, it might be hard to figure out the definitive, this is why they were around. But
and I think that there was enough Sunsoft employees that we would have known by now had somebody been asked. But there's probably some NDAs or stuff they signed that was just like, hey, we can't talk about this other company or whatever. But it was really weird to me that we can't find much information. But if it truly is like this shell company, then that totally makes sense. I'm already like 99% convinced, but there is no like solid concrete. We can't go off like 2chan people just writing random stuff on there. It's not a viable source, but based on kind of our own research, that's our conclusion at least. If you guys have an opinion on this, please let us know.
Yeah, and maybe some of the games to look into that were developed specifically by Tokai Engineering. For the NES, they had Ripple Island, Blaster Master, Seiki Yuo, and Super Spy Hunter. But for the SNES, they had Zack, The Art of Visual Stage, and BS Albert Odyssey.
Yeah. So they had a few things out there. It's just not a lot. But Blaster Master, that's a huge one. Super Spy Hunter, very, very big. And Ripple Island was really big in Japan. So it's like these weren't just kind of like, off to the side projects. These were kind of major things. And maybe, just maybe, Sunsoft knew that these would be kind of hit games. And that's why they had like Tokai Engineering kind of step in as the... Yeah.
Or maybe at the time, some of these games could have been more risky or something like that. And Sunsoft didn't want to get dragged down if it didn't do well, but if it did great, Sunsoft still had their arm in there, into Tokai. Right. So if Tokai went down, I don't know.
But, anyways, so let's get into our next track. This is the opening of the game. We already heard the title screen.
Yeah.
This opening is going to blow your mind, and this is composed by Naoki Kodaka.
That was the opening to Journey to Silius, composed by Naoki Kodaka.
Man, this is the coolest track, dude. Seriously, it's so good.
Yeah, in a lot of NES games didn't have like real dedicated openings. A lot of them kind of got right into it.
Really foreboding, desolate, this post-apocalyptic. I don't know.
To me, it felt kind of like a funeral or something. Like it was very dark and somber, and that end part to me was like so Terminator.
Oh, shot.
Yeah, that dun. Like I was like, man, that's so Terminator.
Yeah, I got this feeling of bagpipe. You look at it from this very like post-apocalyptic kind of view, but at the same time, when you hear those like those kind of trills, the and the different notes and stuff, kind of accompanying, adding into that really low sustained bass, it gave me the sense of a bagpipe, like a guy playing a bagpipe and like this very, in Scotland, you get all the mist and fog all around him and just really kind of eerie and dark, but at the same time, like really just beautiful. I like that.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah, because where there was the really, really heavy parts, and then I thought of it as kind of like a flute or something kind of comes in and it's lighter.
Oh yeah,
and,
later on, yeah.
Yeah, and that to me that just kind of added a lot more sorrow to the track, and to me gave it a little bit more of that funeral feel. And I mean, the beginning of this game is very dark anyway, like the story and the theme of it. But I mean, this track fit perfectly.
I gotta say, this does have a Terminator vibe, though. After I hear it, and I wonder why that is. I wonder why the sound of it is coming across that way.
Yeah, we were kind of talking how a lot of times we've noticed that in games, the composers and stuff like that, they don't come in towards the end. So we were curious as to how long this game stayed Terminator before they lost the license and had to switch it. So if Kodaka came in and wrote all this music,
thinking it was a Terminator game,
which would make sense, especially for the end of that track, that so how long did it stay Terminator for the music to be like, oh, we're already done with the music? So
right.
I mean, was it like very much at the end that it was like, all right, let's change out a few sprites and let's go from there?
Or they're like, hey, Kodaka, we got this game called Raft World, and we just want you to make some music for it, and this is what it turned into.
Yeah, I mean, they could have said, post-apocalyptic robots, things like that, and he could have been like, well, I saw this movie a while ago.
I saw this movie called Terminator a while ago.
Yeah.
Anyways, no, I think that the soundtrack is, oh God, that first track is so good.
Yeah.
It might be my favorite my favorite track in this whole game.
Yeah, and it's not really that long.
No, it's not. Anyways, Naoki Kodaka, aka Chokun, that's his handle. If you find something that says Chokun, Anyways, Kodaka was one of the main composers at Sunsoft, and he did nearly all of their NES and Famicom titles. His parents had him playing the piano when he turned 3, and he continued taking lessons until he was 7. I guess he would hear melodies and stuff from, music from his parents, and he listened to stuff on TV, like different TV shows and commercials. And then what he would do is he'd go to the piano, he'd sit down and just kind of try to play them by ear, kind of just map them out in his own mind. Which is a really good sign of somebody who's going to be a composer going on.
I mean, that's nuts to be able to not only to remember that, but then to kind of take it in from a totally different instrument and transcribe it into piano. I mean, I don't have any musical abilities. Maybe it's not that difficult. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I mean, I remember trying to recreate the Juicy Fruit commercial on the piano.
Yeah, you love that Juicy Fruit song.
It just didn't work that. But yeah, currently he's working as a researcher and lecturer at Nagoya College of Music, focusing on music and video, kind of how to incorporate audio into film. So I was kind of stalking him a little bit. I was curious. I was like, okay, so what is he doing now? And he has information publicly online through the university in Nagoya. And so I found a syllabus, kind of like this basic overview.
Yeah, I mean, that's not too uncommon. My girlfriend, she teaches at a few colleges, and the syllabuses are all out there. Yeah. Or the syllabi are all out there for them to take on and learn and incorporate. So.
Yeah, and if you're a new student, you'd be like, okay, I want to take this class. Like, what is this class all about? I have no idea based on the title. So, so I looked at this kind of basic outline of his class, and I guess he kind of talks about how music was produced on old computers and kind of how to relate that. Because I guess what he's doing is he's taking more of like a historical approach to how audio in either games or movies or other films can be made today. So he looks at like old computer music, how it was used in commercials, old commercials, anime, movies, and he kind of explores and researches these different kind of ideas and theories behind why certain music fits into that kind of media the way it does.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. That was a lot how our art school was set up. The art school that I went to, we had art history, and even in a lot of our just illustration classes, we talked a lot about what other people did, how they did it, what mediums they used, and how that conveyed the message that they wanted to talk about. So that you kind of have this arsenal and that you can pull from as you're making new stuff. So that is actually pretty interesting. And I mean, I know that we would love to sit in on one of those classes and just listen.
Oh yeah, it's funny because I actually contacted him. I sent him an email because there's a few places where you can find the staff directory, and so I found it on there. I mean, this is like seriously stalking shit. This is pretty bad. And so I was like, okay, so I'm just gonna email him. ask him some simple questions. But it was a weekend, so I probably won't hear back from him until after this episode is already done and said and done.
Yeah.
But, whatever. Maybe we'll have him on a future episode.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, there's a ton of amazing games that he's worked on.
Yeah. So, some of those games are Spy Hunter, Euphoria, Afterburner 2, Platoon, Blaster Master, which everybody loves.
Yeah.
Actually, everybody loves all of these.
Yeah.
I think we've even played a track from Euphoria at one point.
I think we did too, yeah.
Yeah, and then Gremlins 2, Fester's Quest, Albert Odyssey 1 and 2. But he has a ton of other things he's been uncredited for, or, he's done some sound design on. Just a lot of help all over the board.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many games that we could have him on an episode for. I would love to do like a Gremlins 2 or something like that.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Gremlins 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, let's get into some more music. So
right, what do we got?
Next up, we have Stage 1, which is also the final stage music.
You just heard Stage 1 that also plays during the final stage, composed by Naoki Kodaka for Journey to Silius on the NES.
What a great track. The great energy, like awesome melodies. I mean, it's really good track.
I know, it's awesome. I really like the, and you'll hear this throughout every track that we're going to play today, is that vibrato on the square waves. Every single, like, part of the melody where he sustains a note, he just has this really, almost delayed vibrato, and it sounds really pretty, I think, through everything in this.
Oh,
this
yeah.
track.
I mean, it definitely adds to the complexity of this track, makes it very clean. I mean, it'd still be a great track without that, but it just is those one little subtle touches that just makes this track so good.
Yeah.
And I love towards the end of the track when the melody just gets higher and then it goes another step higher.
Yeah.
And then it's just like screeching, but it's not bad. It's not like that kind of hurts. Yeah. It's just like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Yeah. With that really deep, rich bass that's in, the drums that are going on, and then to go that high was so awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. You mentioned something about Little Phaser.
Yeah, when the track starts out, there's like this little kind of sound like in the background. It's very subtle, and I thought that was kind of cool. And to me, it sounds like a little blaster gun or something like that, which kind of adds to this Warzone type feel, I guess. But
right. So that's actually kind of a clever trick that Naoki Kodaka is doing for this whole soundtrack. So we were saying, most of the bass line is done on the sampling channel, and it's really cool. So you want to hear the sampling channel real quick? So we'll listen to that, and then I'll continue the explanation. So you get this really, just really driving bass line. All right. And so what you're talking about is actually, like I was saying, another kind of trick that he's doing. And that's that he is using the triangle channel to kind of approximate a kick drum.
Yeah.
And so where you're hearing that little phaser kind of laser gun sound is because, this is more of like a melodic channel, but it's kind of twisting what you can do in the sound driver to make it sound almost like that bass. So let's add that in. Well, let's listen to it by itself real quick. Yeah, see what I mean?
Yeah.
But it has that beat feel to it, right?
Yeah, it definitely adds to that.
So let's just add the noise channel in and the sampling channel back in. Hear how it sounds. It's pretty cool. God, that's so rocking.
Yeah, you can see how they really work well together.
Oh yeah, very good compliment, all three. So cool. This game, when I beat it last night, I sent you the picture and you're like, oh man, there's a lot of people on the music staff on the screenshot. I remember seeing those, but how do they kind of fall in? And so the music staff in the credits says there's Nobuyuki Hara, Shinichi Seiya, and Naohisa Moroda. Really what they didn't do any composition, but what they did was they did the programming work to create that really rad bass line that we're hearing on the sampling channel. And also they did the that effect for the triangle channel to kind of mimic that bass drum. So I think that, with their kind of engineering, Kodaka was able to produce something very, very unique for the NES that we don't normally hear. Even with all these restraints of the system and different limitations, people are trying to come up with different new techniques to make the sound different and more rich, more vibrant, more dark. And I think they were able to pull something really unique for the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's coming from two people that love Sunsoft sound already. And to see that they really put a lot of effort into making the soundtrack for this game stand out in a different way compared to, the tons of NES titles that were out.
Right. And I was kind of curious. I was like, okay, maybe Kodaka was reusing the same. Because I feel like the noise channel is very similar to some other games that he's done. So I was kind of listening to him side by side, and you have a different range of sounds that you can make with the noise channel. But I was listening to his other stuff, and it's very, very different. So he really had kind of like a vision when he was creating the soundtrack and stuck with it. And I guess he didn't backpedal to other soundtracks.
Yeah, he didn't
kind of use the same stuff over.
Yeah, it's almost like maybe he, had done so many amazing soundtracks and wanted to try something different and push the NES a little bit further, because like we said, he did a lot of the Sunsoft games for the NES and Famicom, so maybe by this point he's like, I really want to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, kind of, spread my wings out.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we haven't really talked about the game yet, and you did some research on the story, so what do we got?
Yeah, so the game takes place in the year 0373 in a new space calendar, and the reason for this is that Earth has become so overpopulated that people are forced to create these new space colonies, so it's kind of adds to this whole like futuristic feel of the game.
A few years away from that.
Yeah, yeah. So you play as Jay McRae, who is the son of a scientist responsible for the creation and development of this space colony number 429 in the Silius solar system, or just SSS, which that's a hard one to say. The Silius solar system.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to live there.
Yeah, well, sounds like people didn't really have a choice. You're kind of forced off the planet, and it sounds like there's a lot of other colonies out there.
That's right.
So in this game, Jay is en route to move to this colony to follow in his father's footsteps at the space station. But while he's on his way, the space station explodes and kills everyone, and all the data that went into the space station goes up too. So it's pretty sad. That's really a horrific start to this game, and this plays during that very somber music and it's a really cool cutscene.
We're playing this anyway as you're saying that.
Yeah. So at this point, Jay's really sad. There's this big accident. His father's gone. He's going through a lot of his father's stuff at his house, and he finds this floppy disk containing all the data for the space station that was thought to be destroyed, as well as a personal message from his father. So the plot kind of thickens a little bit here when his father reveals that this is not an accident. that he knew that these terrorists were going to come and probably destroy this space station, this colony, and wants Jay to continue his work. Here's all the data, and I want you to, follow through with this colony. But Jay is hell-bent on not only protecting these plans, but hunting down the terrorists that were responsible for his father's death. So that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's a lot darker than I expected. I mean, coming from the Terminator original plan, they're like, what do we need to make? Well, let's do something really dark like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they were trying to kind of keep that. The game does feel that way. There's a lot of really dark backgrounds and stuff, and maybe they were trying to keep that story kind of match the atmosphere in the sprite world. So they didn't have to just completely redo everything.
Yeah, I can totally see that with the post-apocalyptic feel. That's the space station being blown up, but in Terminator, that's where the robots have already taken over, the dark backgrounds, and you can see that a lot of this game is robots. So
right. Anyways, we got another track.
Yeah.
This is from Stage 2, so let's check that out.
You just heard Stage 2 from Journey to Silius, composed by Naoki Kodaka for the NES.
God, so awesome, man.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love the opening to that, and I love how they reuse it over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Just I love that, like the super deep sound, the really awesome drums that are going on, and then it breaks off and gets into that higher range, and the more of that vibrato stuff that's going on, it makes it feel so heartfelt.
You know, it's really interesting because the lead is in the kind of more mid-range. It almost feels like this this cello kind of even though, you know, it's a square wave, it does have kind of like this almost like string instrument to it. It's got to be like 50% duty cycle or something on the square wave there, but it sounds so desperate and has really powerful energy to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely had like a band feel. I could see like this, you know, rock band has a huge drum set, and the drummer's just like going nuts. And then there's the parts, you know, I always love when you watch bands and drummers are just sitting back there and they got this like attitude to them. They're not playing, and they know that there's a part coming up for them. And they're just like,
yeah, their veins are already kind of bulging, and they're just like, okay, I'm waiting for this part.
Yeah. Oh man, this track is so good though. Yeah. I mean, and I loved how, like I said, with the opening part where they reuse it, and I thought, oh, okay, cool. Here's the loop again. That second part is not a loop, but it starts out very similar, and then it just goes nuts. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my god, what am I hearing? This is so good.
This track doesn't loop. It's really 3 minutes and 40 something seconds, the full way through, because it has kind of these different sections to it, even though it does kind of sound the same.
Yeah.
But do you want to hear that DPCM sample channel real quick? Because I think it's really cool. It's kind of the star, I think. So you can see it's not really doing anything like crazy. It's not like wild with it, but it's just so grungy and dark.
Well, and it's so deep, and it's always making noise, and it's always filling out that track and keeping in that low range. But you heard some of the things. It's hitting pretty quickly. It's like like I was really digging that.
I like how they have the little octaves in there too. It's like
yeah. There was definitely a little bit of variation, but I mean, I would love to hear like that percussion section in this track.
Yeah. So the like the noise channel and the triangle. Then? Okay, let's listen to that.
Yeah, I mean, so you can see it sounds like there's a ton of different drums going on. I mean, that's so nuts.
God, that's so good.
Yeah, here's where he like spinning the guitar or the drumstick in his hand.
Oh my god, that is so jammed, dude. Yeah. Man, I can't stop listening.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's really cool.
Yeah, so let's talk about this game a little bit. Like we mentioned, it's not an easy task at all.
No.
And to beat the game, Jay must fight his way through a variety of robots, security systems, bosses in 5 extremely difficult side-scrolling levels, each with their own theme as you progress through the game's story. Some of those themes are ruins of a space colony, underground concourse, enemy hideout, space station, and a very Terminator-esque factory.
Yeah, you have a couple of different actions your character can perform, but they're pretty much standard for any NES game, really. You can aim your gun right and left, but you can only lay down and shoot.
Yeah, so there's no shooting up or stuff like that.
Right. You can get 5 additional weapons, like a shotgun, machine gun, homing missiles. There's a laser rifle and a grenade launcher, and these are really crucial to the gameplay. All of the guns outside of your basic one consume this gun energy. So, like, there's 2 different bars. There's your health bar at the top, and there's also your gun extra meter. It's kind of like the Mega Man kind of power meter for your special weapons. And it's indicated, like I said, right below your health bar. Once you run out of ammo, it automatically switches you back to your regular gun. Now, the thing is, you might come across like some health or maybe some extra ammunition, but it's so sparse in this game, you might as well just start over in certain situations. Because you really need some of this extra firepower to get through some of the bosses.
Yeah, I mean, the ammo, just finding extra ammo is really sparse, but finding health is even rarer. I mean, it's really super rare, and you get that from shooting enemies and killing them. Sometimes they drop stuff, but I noticed that a lot of the times, if it's going to drop anything, it's going to drop some type of ammo.
Yeah, it's very R&D. There's not a whole lot that you can do. There's no like, oh, I know that this little bad guy here is going to give me some health or something.
Yeah,
it's never like that.
You know, like you see like when people are speedrunning Castlevania and stuff like that. They're like, oh, if I hit every so many guys, we'll drop this, and it's not like that.
Yeah,
so.
well, at least in our plays, we didn't get that. So the thing about it, though, is that, for me, when I was playing this game, you really need to hang on to your special power-ups, because every time you get to the end of a level, there's kind of like this mid-boss or kind of like pre-boss.
Yeah.
It's really weird why they do that right at the end.
Yeah.
And then you fight the boss.
Yeah, because as soon as you kill that end pre-boss, it drops like this thing, and then you're ready to go. You're just ushered right into the boss fight.
Well, it drops the next weapon that you can use in your arsenal. And a lot of the times I noticed that the weapon that it drops is useful for that boss. So like there's this one boss where you have to shoot this crystal ball. It's like a huge tank, and you have to shoot this crystal ball. And the laser is perfect because if you jump, it shoots this really powerful beam in.
Super straight, yeah.
Yeah, and then also same thing with the homing missiles. There's a boss where you really have to time out like this perfect spot where you hit it in the eyeball or something like that. But with the homing missiles, it is a lot easier.
Yeah,
so.
and they're pretty funny to watch too, because it's like very jagged angles that it there's not like an diagonal. It's just like up, left, right, and it's really, really funny to watch.
Yeah, I did like that it didn't baby you though, and I think that's kind of maybe what frustrated me as a kid, but at the same time I remember games being hard like that, and I like that about them, where you really have to kind of memorize the game, kind of map it out and play it a few times. You're not going to pick this game up for the first time and be able to make it through level 1 and the boss. Like,
right.
It's just, it's unless you are super careful. There's even some cheap moments where you may, you're moving to the right, but you can kind of back up a little bit, and if you do, sometimes a bad guy will just like pop out from behind you.
They come from both directions, and as you're moving forward, it feels like they're just right on the edge. So you're like, okay, cool, I just killed a thing, and then it's like, boom, next thing jumps out, and a lot of the time they can jump right at you, and they've taken a quarter of the screen off, and they're right in front of you now, and it takes 6 or 7 shots to kill them. So it's not like this, okay, I shot him once, they're dead.
Right.
It's like, no, they take some damage.
You really have to jam on it. Well, the thing is about that too, is that you can jump and kind of move yourself in the air, but if you fall off a ledge, you'll kind of go at like a defined angle of descent.
Yeah.
So you'll always land on something. And the problem with this is if you jump and you kind of control yourself around, an enemy may pop up like right in your path, like completely unavoidable. There is no way, and I'm promising you, there is no way to get around this because I use save states on this point.
Yeah.
And I remember just trying to jump, and I was like, there is no possible solution without getting it.
There's definitely spots where you have to take damage.
Yeah. God, I love NES
which is stressful. I mean, it's like I only have so much life, and they're not going to give me much more.
Yeah, so I had to really be like careful on like where I took damage, because I knew those bosses, they don't mess around, man. They're hard stuff. So.
Well, and one thing I noticed too, it doesn't have a life indicator at all, as far as like how many lives you have left. The bosses don't have a health meter, but it doesn't show you how many lives you have left either.
No, it does tell you actually after you die. It will briefly say, hey, you have like 2 rests remaining or something like that. But it's other than that, you just got to, oh man, was this my last life or not? I don't know.
Yeah, if you're not quite sure.
Yeah, you do get some continues though, which is nice. So you can continue from not exactly where you left off, but from that same level. So if you're in like level 4, you could continue, and you got all the way to the boss and you died, game over, you can continue from level 4 again.
Yeah, but you only get so many, but we did find that there is a cheat.
Yes.
I think, what was it, hit like B 34 times?
So you hit B on the title screen, you hit B 33 times exactly.
Yeah.
And then it brings you to a this options mode, and you can listen to the game soundtrack,
which is awesome.
And then you can also change the amount of continues.
Yeah, I think it's from like 3 to 9 is like the max.
Yeah, so. It's a ton of continues you can add on there.
But you're probably still going to need them all.
Yeah, you're going to need them. So no, that was really cool though, because it helped us get through the game a little bit better. The game itself is really fun. It is challenging, but it's not the frustrating kind of challenging. It's like the man, this was
I'm going to get it.
Yeah. So when I beat the game, I was just like, whew, slept happy.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I've noticed that Sunsoft does that really well. They seem to make a game that's hard, but is not frustrating. Like,
it's not totally punishing. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the when we did the Batman episode, I really put a lot of effort into trying to beat that game. I couldn't get those final 2 bosses.
I can see you're looking pissed off right now just remembering that.
I couldn't get those final 2 bosses. I knew what I needed to do, but some of those levels, once you figured out the trick on how to do certain things, you're like, oh man, that's so awesome. I'm like really awesome. But yeah, it's great. I've always loved Sunsoft. As soon as I hear the name, I'm really excited already.
Right.
So
let us know your guys' thoughts on this game. If you love the game, I mean, we're talking about the soundtrack, but if you also loved the gameplay and it was something you guys remember growing up, let us know your experience with it. Maybe you hated it. Maybe this was awful.
Yeah.
Just let us know. All right, so we're going to play 2 tracks. This is stage 4, and then we're going to play the boss battle.
That was Stage 4 and Boss Battle, composed by Naoki Kodaka for Journey to Silius on the NES.
These are both really cool tracks.
Yeah.
That first track, Stage 4, is I really like that melody. I think it's really cool. And I think the sampling channel and the drums are still pretty rocking.
Yeah.
Pretty much through the whole track and the next one. But yeah, no, I like this one.
Yeah, I think this first track, Stage 4, is one of the tracks that reminds me the heaviest of Terminator, that I think has a lot of that Terminator feel still left in it, which reminds me of a part directly from the first movie where you're...
Which part?
So it's the part where Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor are in their truck and they're driving away from the Terminator, and he's following them in a motorcycle, and they're throwing like the nitroglycerin bombs. No, that's in the second movie.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So they've made like those nitroglycerin canisters, like right before they got together and created John Connor, I guess. But so they're driving away, and the Terminator's behind them, and they're like lighting the fuses and throwing them out. And I think that's like right at towards the end of the movie. And I think that's kind of they end up in the factory. But that whole part reminds me, the beginning of the song reminds me of the music from that part, and then it breaks off and gets into like this more soaring kind of section, which I thought was really cool. But it reminded me very much of that eerie feeling of being chased by the Terminator.
The DPCM channel is pretty awesome. You want to hear that one?
Oh, yeah.
We'll solo that one. I like it.
Super heavy.
Yeah. Got a little salsa in there, a little calypso or something.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, and I really like the boss battle. It's so dirty and scary. It's like,
yeah,
so much evil energy.
That bass is just like, it's like rumbling. It's so deep and heavy, and it's just like stressfully urgent.
Yeah,
like it's like, I need to get out of this battle right now. But I really liked it. And then there's that alarm part where it's like super high pitch, and it's just like a little bit of drums going on in the background. I was like, oh my God, that's like so scary.
Yeah.
So,
do you want to hear that DPCM channel again?
Oh yeah.
All right. Oh man, that gets low.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so DPCM stands for Differential Pulse Code Modulation, but I've seen this channel called the DMC and also like DCM before, kind of, if you look around the internet.
Yeah.
They refer to it different ways. And the NES uses kind of like this basic form of DPCM called delta modulation, which uses a 1-bit data stream and it codes the differences in the signal amplitude instead of the signal amplitude itself. So it just looks at those changes. I think that's kind of, it's simple, but it's really unique to the NES hardware. And basically, though, the channel plays these 1-bit PCM samples at one of 16 playback rates. And it's more common to see them kind of at the higher rates because the lower you go, the crappier they start to sound. They start getting really fuzzy. Now, for this, it really adds kind of this breadth to the soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, I love learning about all this stuff, since the soundtrack just stood out to me so much as something I loved, but then to find out that there's a lot of really cool tricks and tips and things that they're doing in this that make it a little bit different.
Right. So we normally talk about a little bit about the graphics when we're talking about kind of the stylistic approach to the game. There's that cutscene.
Yeah,
that is really it's really awesome. You got kind of these still images, dark shadows. Maybe you can kind of explain that a little bit better than me.
Yeah, it's very muted colors. It's very heavy shadowing, much like a manga or a graphic novel where it's not focused on like the details of the person. There's a lot of silhouettes. There's like a silhouette of Jay standing at his father's grave, and he's kind of rim lit from behind, and he's just a solid silhouette. And then there's like other ones of him kind of looking down, like sad, and you know, his eyes aren't visible, and there's just a lot of shadows and just nice little details in the background. And it's just really, really well done.
Yeah, it gets you into I mean, with that music playing on top of it, it just gets into that state of like, oh, this, man, I'm in for a wild ride.
Yeah, and one of the things that the game does well with choosing a lot of muted colors and darker ranged colors for the backgrounds and some of the landscaping type stuff, like the buildings or bricks and things that you're standing on, is it allows Jay to really pop off. And the enemies, a lot of the robots are kind of like a light color or a white robot, which I thought was actually really neat looking because it reminded me a lot of like that Honda robot that's out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's white with like the black screened face, and that's how a lot of these robots feel. It's kind of like that, and I thought, oh, that's actually a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's funny they kind of kept that robot trope, that, you know, mental image of a robot, and they still put it out in the real world, and then this kind of exudes that same kind of kind of look. And
I can see that being like a pretty easy sprite swap if they had more like Terminator looking robots originally, and then just kind of swap them out with these more rounded, like futuristic feeling robots that are kind of encased. They're not like humanoid.
Right. And a lot of the environments too, it's like a place you wouldn't want to be in an NES game.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, they had a lot of really great textures, a lot of cool patterns, really neat use of black. Like I noticed that a lot of the boss sprites, you can see like black outlines in them, but when they die, you see it go like negative, and you notice that the sprite actually has like blank space, and that's where the background is picking up the black. So I thought it was a really cool way to maybe make it a little bit easier with these massive sprites, because some of these bosses take up most of the screen, and that end boss takes up like 3 screens and he scrolls past you. So I wonder if that was to help make sure that there wasn't a lot of screen, sprites clipping and dropping out and things like that. So
I didn't notice any of that, really. I was playing an emulator, actually, but even as a kid, I don't remember a whole lot of sprite tearing or anything.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad, which I noticed that, a lot of these bosses are massive.
Yeah. Anyways, we're going to take a step back. We just listened to Stage 4. We're going to backpedal a little bit and play Stage 3 music, and we will be right back.
That was Stage 3, composed by Naoki Kodaka for Journey to Silius on the NES.
Those notes have that swelling kind of. It's almost like they're weeping, they're crying, they're.
It kind of reminded me of like when you're playing music on something and you cover up the speaker and then you lift your thumb off of it, and it kind of has that like
kind of muted sound.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool. It gave it like a really odd feel to the beginning, and then such a beautiful melody.
One thing too that was kind of interesting about this track is there's a lot of emphasis on the kind of lower end and the percussion, and then completely polar to that, it has a emphasis on the high end. You don't really have a mid range, so you get this dark kind of tone and this sound that's really bright and pops.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of an interesting kind of Terminator motif or something to throw into the sound.
Yeah, and I think one thing that they did with this track to help draw more attention to that was kind of the way the higher range worked together. Like the different instruments kind of did a little bit of like a call and answer type, like, all right, it's your turn, my turn, your turn, which I thought was really cool. It drew a lot of attention away from that lower end that was going on, and kind of, I don't know, it was like started out very dark and then got very more like, you can do this, like it's gonna be all right. And I mean, you're a little over halfway through the game at this point, so
you want to hear that DPCM track again?
Oh yeah,
it's really cool. Man, that's cool. I just picture this big fat dude with the bass guitar just plugging away. Oh yeah, no, I dig that.
Yeah, no, I could totally see what you were seeing with the big guy playing the bass and just like going to town.
Big fat bald dude just going to town on a bass guitar, just plugging away and just kind of closing his eyes and Anyways, this game actually, when it came out, it had some regional differences. It looked a lot different when it came to the States. In fact, we were kind of talking to ourselves earlier about like why did they rename this from RAF World? I mean, which is already kind of interesting, changing from the Terminator.
Yeah.
Why did they name it Journey to Silius when it was brought stateside?
Yeah, it's one of those things where unless we're part of the company, we'll never know like why they made that choice. I'm sure they just felt, RAF World probably wouldn't translate.
Maybe like, it's not a sales thing.
Yeah, that's probably. It seems like that's one of the biggest reasons why they change names when there's really no reason to do it. Is that different region is going to react to it a little differently.
Yeah.
I mean, like when we did the Shadow of the Ninja episode, I mean, every iteration, every market had a different name. There was Kage and Blue Shadow. I mean, it's like, what? Like Shadow of the Ninja sounds pretty cool to me, but I mean, any of them really didn't sound that bad.
Yeah. The thing, though, is it's not just like they changed the name and maybe changed the text. They actually changed the complete title screen. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different splash screen that you get. They kind of give it a little bit more color. The original one, or the Japanese one, is this kind of like black on white text. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's very empty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you looked at a lot of title screens from the NES and Famicom, it was a black background. And this one has a white background, which feels very different. And then also the whole developer publisher credits is at the top instead of at the bottom, which is really kind of weird. It was very different.
Mm-hmm. But the American release, Journey to Silius, it's a black background with some like bluish yellow text.
Yeah, it's got that fake chrome kind of look to it, which was very popular.
And then like the bolted on sign, Sunsoft and licensed by Nintendo kind of thing on there.
Yeah.
There were a few other changes to the game though. The main character actually went through a little bit of a new coat of paint, a little bit of a sprite swap, right? He started in Japan as this very kind of almost like Master Chief kind of.
Yeah, he kind of looks like a blue Halo character.
Yeah.
And then when it came to the US, he had like a bigger. He kind of reminds me of like a Futurama looking guy.
Yeah.
But he had an exposed head and more of like a space outfit instead of like space
armor
gear. Yeah, space armor.
His gun changed a little bit too.
A little bit, yeah.
More of like a pea shooter in the American version.
Yeah.
Not sure why that is. But yeah, Journey to Silius did find itself re-released on a 2-in-1 memorial series that Sunsoft did called Volume 5 with Hebereke and Euphoria, which is it's known as here. And this was for the PlayStation.
Yeah.
So the game did get re-released.
Yeah, and it got bundled with another Kodaka game, which so it's going to have another awesome soundtrack. But it is neat to see that this was years later with the PlayStation that this game got another audience to kind of check it out. So
yeah, what year did that memorial thing get released?
I'm actually not sure offhand. I don't remember seeing.
Probably was like late 90s.
Yeah,
probably should have checked beforehand.
Yeah, the PlayStation was probably rolling pretty heavy, and they decided let's just bring a bunch of cool stuff to it.
Yeah, just write our own little PlayStation emulator for it. There was some unused music actually in the game. They're little jingles. Actually, it's not really like full blown tracks. But if you put in like this patch code with the Game Genie, you can actually access them, and they're not in the sound test either. So, you want to listen to those real quick?
Oh yeah,
it's like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the first one, and here's the second one.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not missing much. Anyways, but it was in the game.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we get into our last track, James?
Yeah. And this is aptly named The Ending. And we'll be right back.
That was the ending track for Journey to Silius, composed by Naoki Kodaka and performed by Mr. Big. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I thought the beginning of this track had a little bit of a different feel compared to the game.
It was completely different.
But then the middle to the end of the track kind of brought it back home to where it got a little bit sadder and a little bit more heartfelt, which I could kind of see. Like, you're so excited you beat it, you're like overjoyed, but then maybe for Jay it kind of sinks in that like, I still lost my dad and all those people are gone. But, you know, I liked it a lot,
I got
especially
revenge.
towards the end.
I got revenge, but, you know, all the bad stuff already happened. Can't do that. I thought the track was almost like a little march, little pompous, I guess. It's fun. I mean, you know, it serves its purpose. It's meant to be like that kind of feel-good ending track. Like, hey, like, look, we've been like hitting you with all sorts of like robots and, you know, some tricks where you can't avoid it. We'll give you something. We'll throw you a little bone here and play something a little more lighthearted.
Yeah, I liked it though. I mean, I thought it was kind of cool. I was kind of hoping that there would be some type of an ending image or something going on, but
there is. It's like a satellite.
Yeah. I guess I didn't really count that little satellite floating away, but I guess I wanted a little bit more story.
Yeah.
But
maybe Jay hooking up with like this hot robot chick. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, anyways, so it was kind of a short episode, I think, right? Yeah. So today we covered Journey to Silius, composed by Naoki Kodaka on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yeah, short, but I thought it was very, very good.
Yeah, it was fun.
Needed covered.
Yeah.
So if you want to know more about the show, you can check us out online at our website, pixelatedaudio.com, for show notes and track lists. And we can also be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Pixelated Audio.
Yeah, and if you guys would be so kind to leave us a review on iTunes, that would be really appreciated. And, you know, we read all those, and we get excited when we see somebody, you know, have something nice to say. Even if you guys have some feedback like, hey, you know, I didn't quite like this episode, we're all ears, so please let us know.
You got some other episodes in mind? Shoot us a message.
Oh, yeah. So do you want to give a shout out to Travis Ripley from the U.S.? He gave us a really nice review. A lot of nice things to say, and that brightened up our day. So thank you very much, Travis.
Yeah,
and
enjoyed it.
I hope you like this episode. Anyways, so our past episodes, we already kind of talked about Batman.
Yeah, so we definitely talked about that Sunsoft Batman suite we did, which was like 5 games. It was a pretty big episode.
Yeah, what a weird, like, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, for us, that doesn't sound weird, but I was kind of trying to think of it. We focused on a company, but a company that did a specific licensed title.
Yeah, because there's definitely other like NES Batman games, SNES, Genesis, all that stuff. And we didn't cover those. We covered just the Sunsoft ones, which was, you know, Game Boy, NES, Super NES. I mean, so it was...
And the Genesis, too.
Yeah, and so it was really a fun episode.
Oh, and then there was that TurboGrafx 16 one, or that PC Engine one.
Yeah, there was more like a Pac-Man-ish kind of. It was really weird. I forgot about that one.
Mr. Do or something.
Yeah. And there's also one of our really recent episodes was based on a Korean game called Illusion Blaze, and we even got to talk to half of the composing group DAC, which was a really fun experience for us. So.
I'm very proud of that episode. I think that for me and you, we got to do a lot of really interesting research in something that it was totally out of our knowledge base. It was just like, wow, let's learn about this and figure out exactly what was going on.
Yeah, it was like a whole new level of discovery, which was very exciting.
Yeah, so this soundtrack was actually released in ROM cassette disc in Sunsoft, and it was a 2-disc set that came out in 2013 for about 2,600 yen, which is, you know, like $25. And it featured a bunch of different Sunsoft music, and we'll put links in the show notes on where you can purchase it. And then there was also another disc that came out that was Sunsoft Music Collection Volume 2, and this was in 2011, and it was produced by Wavemaster. And I saw this on Amazon. I was curious. I was wondering how much it goes for. It's about $150.
Yeah.
That's
nuts.
Used.
Yeah,
used.
That's so nuts.
It's all the original sound source. So the game it'll play like Journey to Silius, like, you know, tracks 8 through 17 are all Journey to Silius, and then there's going to be like Euphoria and other kind of Sunsoft games on there. But the track taking us out is titled Superhero, and this was arranged by Johnny, and it was performed by Orekore, and this is a whole remix compilation. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in a few weeks for our next episode.